Welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode, I'll be discussing the 2019 action film sequel, John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum, or Prepare for War. The third movie in the overall John Wick franchise, as directed once again by Stahelski. Once again, following the exploits of its titular character, one John Wick, as played by Keanu Reeves, an ex-assassin come hitman for the murky and often complicated underground world of the criminal element. Continuing almost pretty much to the minute directly from the events of the last in the series, we catch up with Wick, now on the run from, well, just about everyone, after being designated excommunicado, I like that word, from the underworld's established safe house, a chain of hotels known as the Continental, after breaking its rules in pursuit of his own brand of justice. With a hefty price on his head and nowhere and nobody to which Wick finds himself to turn, Wick does find himself with a little bit of a rush on, given only a 60-minute head start against a $14 million bounty. With no time to waste, Wick looks to seek refuge, calling in every favour, debt and marker he has left. However, his actions over the last few weeks have not kind of gone unnoticed with the underworld's regulators, the High Table, who send an adjudicator, as played by Dillon, to punish and hold to account those who have helped and enabled Wick, making, anybody rightfully and very understandably tetchy at wanting to kind of put their own life on the line. As Wick fights his way through a plethora of assassins looking to score big and bag themselves not only the bounty on Wick's head, but also the kudos of bringing down the fabled Baba Yaga, Wick has yet another grueling time ahead. And man, what a trying couple of weeks this guy has had already. Indeed, I mean to think that the first 3 films in this series pretty much follow each other back to back and represent only a kind of a span of a few weeks. It seems like we've kind of come just so far removed from that original, more emotional introduction of Wick that it's hard to kind of really comprehend that it's really only, that's the only timeline that we're actually talking about. The 3 films do seem pretty fluid in this respect. It's becoming quite the saga, Poor Wick is looking pretty beat up and somewhat sluggish. But after the few weeks he's had, I think anyone would be entitled to kind of not really be on the top of their game. And for John, that's much of a muchness. What is evident, however, is that this entry now has much more in common with a more standard kind of action-adventure than kind of the series' more emotional and powerfully motivated roots. Moving the franchise away almost from a kind of total reliance on John Wick as a character towards a more collective approach to its characters. Bringing in many more of the alumni for much more kind of involved roles this time around and examining more of the story from their point of view. This is certainly, I did enjoy that kind of angle that it took as the movie moves through its twists and its turns. Seeing what some of the other kind of characters were actually capable of was certainly a treat, which did, again, feed into this kind of methodology of kind of ever-expanding the universe of John Wick, moreover than really looking to expand Wick as a character. I did find that we didn't get much more development for the character this time around than we had kind of considered previously. It's a pretty simple guy when all's said and done, man of many words. We had a kind of dip into some of his past associations, but nothing really concrete, and kind of nothing on an emotional level at least. John Wick was and remains pretty much the same as we kind of left him in the previous movie, for better or for worse, either way. This one does feel a bit more levelled out from a story perspective, I would admit, in terms of the kind of the overall balance between fights, characters and narrative, but for me, not quite as kind of smoothly presented. I don't think that the quality has gone anywhere per se. This just kind of feels more disjointed in the way the story is actually kind of set out. It cares a little less, perhaps, about the minutiae of things. Now, Going into the movie, I kind of hoped that it would be more than just a 2-hour chase around New York, you know. And of course, we do get some excellent such chase sequences and fight scenes around the Big Apple. And indeed other exotic locales too. Some are particularly noteworthy indeed. Loving the alternative take on the classic car chase they kind of throw in, and specifically a tag team fight sequence that's simply beyond anything we've seen in the series so far. More on that in a little bit. But thankfully, it isn't just that. It does delve more into the lore and the sophistication of the underworld. Still, only kind of throwing tantalising tidbits for the most part, but certainly more than enough to kind of whet our appetite for more as the movie moves on. The fight scene in question that I was just on about, and believe me, there are more than a fair share here once again, is particularly a thing of wonder. Just the way that it's kind of been choreographed, it kind of feels simply like a pack on the hunt, with 2 assassins and 2 canines in one fight, and almost kind of acting in unison. Now, I do have to clarify, I don't support any kind of violence with or to animals of any kind. And in the UK, we have had a pretty bad time of dog attacks of late. And so I know this subject is quite sensitive to many. So I just wanted to kind of add that in. But however, in the context of the film, the way they've kind of filmed this scene and kind of put everything together just feels seamless. There's a real connection between the characters and their canines, you know? And indeed, a real love for them. But in battle, everything is just simply succinct, snappy, smooth, and unparalleled. It feels very much more like a modern set western, with some pretty tense standoff moments, and indeed, very entertaining fight sequences once again, no denying that. Most of which are brutal, pretty graphic, and very much hands-on. There's certainly more than a few skewered body parts, that's for sure. However, I did find that for me, that while it felt far more ruthless perhaps than the previous entries, as a result it had far less of the kind of the finesse and the nuances that really made John Wick who he was, and much of what kind of made him unique. It was less detailed and committed in this respect, relying more on our own perspectives of the character than really kind of embedding this into the story. Overall, this film is yet another action-infused treat, and whilst I found it wasn't perhaps as detailed or as succinctly told this time around, we did get some fantastic world-building elements, more of the complex workings of the criminal underworld, and with a bit more of an adventure flavour than we had kind of seen in the last few entries. Almost, dare I say, a little bit more Bond, perhaps a bit more generic, but certainly still an amazing amount of fun. The fights themselves are once again the focus and brilliantly choreographed throughout, excellently charged. Wick's antics have definitely put the cat among the pigeons at the highest level, and without the resources of the Continental at his disposal, certainly gets creative. Reading a good book, for instance, certainly has its benefits. There's a brilliant mix of fighting styles, and it certainly gives us a few interesting turns of events. The plot does perhaps feel a little sloppy in places, less of an overall focus, but it still continues to be an excellent ride. Still, most definitely having fun with the ideas, landscape, and the world building that it sets forth. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please do leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. Absolutely loved having you at SciFirst MovieTalk. Definitely love to have you back. Most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.